Welcome. Welcome to week 6 of our Weave and Stitch Along. My name is Gabi, and today, well, if it's not obvious, I will tell you, but today is the cross stitch day. And some people say that cross stitch is the most versatile embroidery stitch because you can do so many things with it. And I have a small collection here. There is one blouse that's definitely not made on our pin looms, but I'm using this as an example. And here you see a little collection of Weave It, of the vintage Weave It books that tell us the story that almost 80 plus years ago, when the first square pin looms were extremely popular, they were quite often associated with embroidery on the pin loom squares that were woven. So we'll take a quick look at that in a little while. But I do want to start with a brief show and tell from last week, from week 5, where we explored the blanket and buttonhole stitch. Let's take a look. Can we please zoom in? Thank you. And here is the one buttonhole creation from Nadine. And Nadine tried it out on the hexagon, and I really like two things here. Number one is the color choices, uh, particularly here this lavender that she used to do the blanket stitch around. And also you can see how even Nadine worked those stitches, as well as on the surface, and she used a thinner yarn for to make the buttonhole, which is very authentic. You might remember my mother's blouse where she actually used sewing thread to do the buttonhole stitch. And I just think you can see here a very balanced use of all stitches or all stitch applications, nicely adapted with pretty colors and different uh, threads and yarns. And then here we have Nanette. Nanette did the buttonhole on the square, and also here you see very even stitches. And we had a few people that were a little bit disappointed with the blanket stitch. Trust me, it all takes practice. The blanket stitch is not an easy stitch, but with good practice you get it right very quickly. The key is, number one, to have even stitches in lengths and in widths, and the right tension. Just keep on practicing. Don't get frustrated. Keep on practicing. I think I said it somewhere else. The blanket stitch and the buttonhole stitch, they are truly life skills. You can do so much with them, far beyond anything that you want to do on your pin loom. So these are two examples of a hexagon and a square. And here is the very first purse for our charity project. Susan submitted this, and she was very quick, even before the holiday came up. This is like, okay, here's my hexagon, here's my square, and here's the purse ready to ship. And it brought tears to my eyes because for our charity project, as Cindy mentioned, if we just get two purses, that will make two little girls happy. So keep them coming. And one question that was asked is, can we only do this week? I have more time next week. Absolutely, go ahead. There's no deadline to this project. You make it, you post it, you ship it, and you make a little girl happy. All right, this is about week 5, but I also would like to mention a few things that have to do with previous weeks. Here, for example, and this is from another Susan, um, this Susan decided to rework some of her earlier weeks because she was not really happy with the results. And take a look at how beautiful this is with a little bit more practice and having learned so much from the first round. Um, she redid the week 2, the week 3, and the week 4, and take a look at how balanced and even and well done these were. So Susan, absolutely well done and well worth the effort. Um, I thought your previous work was already pretty cool, but I will admit that this one looks even better. And I just this week we welcomed several new starters, and I have here Carolyn on Facebook got started, and she will be making squares. And so welcome, Carolyn. And one thing I liked very much about her choices is that she has these um, almost fall color choices. And I know we just celebrated the 4th of July here in the United States, which means summer is at its peak. Um, but I will be honest that I just love those fall colors. So I really enjoy seeing her progress with making uh, her designs using all those very pretty fall colors. And here is one more that I would like to show. Welcome, Ricky. And Ricky started this week to join us on the hexagon pin loom, and the first photo that she posted, she said it was a coincidence, but the yarn that she used for the embroidery is the same color as her brand new um, nail polish, and I think all of it goes very well together. So welcome, Carolyn, welcome, Ricky, and there were actually I think 1 or 2 other people. The message is that if you start late, there is no too late. Start anytime, join us, join at the beginning or join in the middle. Most important thing is that you learn something about embroidery on your pin looms and that you will have a lot of fun. All right? Okay, so that much about the show and tell. Now let's take a look at our week 6 of the Weave and Stitch Along. And we already mentioned that it will be about cross stitch, and here is our example. We are going to cross stitch the letter J. So why is that? Cross stitch, you can do really so much with it, and probably from preparing this session, it was one of the more difficult sessions for me to prepare because there's so much that I would like to show, and you can do this, and you can do this, and you can do this. However, we have to limit it to one session and something that you can do in 1 week. So I chose something, again, pretty and practical, which is the alphabet. And since we all have different names, I chose the J for July. And I want to tie this back to the um, temperature blanket that we talked about briefly last week. So here is an opportunity to embroider in cross stitch the first letter of each month to indicate that a new month starts on your temperature blanket. This, of course, is just one example of many, many possibilities. Um, you probably noticed here this embroidery. This is from a blouse from Dubrovnik in Croatia. Um, there is so much tradition to cross stitch, and I'll just see if I can take this over here. So this is a blouse from Croatia. There are many ladies that cross stitch without any patterns. They kind of just start and then they cross stitch all winter, and then in the summer they sell the blouses to tourists, and these are true heirlooms. The reason why I'm mentioning this, just when you walk around, you will probably start looking for cross stitch all by yourself. But you know, for example, here these small flowers or these X's and these borders, perfect fit for your pin loom. So these motifs are small enough, these designs are small enough that they will fit perfectly onto your pin loom. And we'll talk about that a little bit more later, on how you can do this and how you can make your own patterns. But before we go there, I also want to show you a few things here. Um, in You probably saw these before. These are two vintage booklets from the Weave It. Yeah, it's not the Weave It company, but from the Weave It looms, which are the one of the traditional 4-inch square looms. Um, this is from, I think this is from the 30s. I should have looked that up before. Um, what I want to show you here is that a lot of the vintage, the original booklets have actually suggested embroidery in it. Here, for example, is a pillow with embroidery, and they have very simple schematics down here, so you have to do a lot of guesswork. But I just want to show you this, that they do have it in there. Let me see what we have here. Oh yeah, here is, for example, a handbag that has some freestyle, super modern embroidery. This is not necessarily cross stitch, but I think this is just back stitch, or no, running stitch. Okay. And then here we have, oh yeah, here's a very funny one, a Tyrolean jacket. So clothing with some motifs with embroidery. And we had recently several people that looked into making mittens, fingerless mittens or not. And here's an example where we have mittens with embroidery on them. And this is actually the lazy daisy stitch and the straight stitch. Let's take a look. Oh yeah, here is another one with a doll pattern, and where there's a little bit embroidery here on the dress that comes with it. So here is another one, Weave It Afghans, book number 4. And of course, this is, you can see it already on the front, this is loaded with embroidery suggestions. And what I want to point out here is that a lot of them are not just necessarily done on the loom, but off the loom. So there are a lot of patterns that go across more than one, but also plenty, like these little roses, very cutely, that go on, that just will fit perfectly uh, on one square, or in our case, square or hexagon. Let me just hold this up here so that you can see this a little bit better. Really cute little motifs. So if you don't have the printed editions of the Weave It booklets, I want to point out an enormously wonderful resource, which is the website Illumination. And at this point, I want to give a huge shout out to Gianna Trent, who for years went through the effort in documenting everything she could find about those little pin looms. And there is, on the Illumination website, under projects, she has downloadable PDF files of a lot of the books, um, the vintage books, whether it's Weave It or Lumet or what have you, with a wealth of not just project information, but also great resource for embroidery that will fit on your 4-inch square, and a lot of it will fit onto on the hexagon loom. So huge, tremendous history, um, tremendous resources. But at this point, I would like to get started with our project this week. as I mentioned before, I want to use a letter in cross stitch, and initially I thought I'm going to make up my own alphabet. So I started, and then I looked at Pinterest and found so many beautiful and different alphabets that I decided it's really not worth it to reinvent the wheel. So you will find on our Pinterest board a small section with cross-stitch alphabets, some of which you can see right here. And these alphabets are all chosen to fit onto our looms. So all of these alphabets will fit on the 4-inch zoom loom or square loom, and also on the original hexagon turtle loom. What does it mean it fits? And I will show this to you. I left this intentionally on the loom so that it's easier for us to show a few things. So here's the letter J for July. And if you count with me how many rows from bottom to top, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And we make each of those little X's over 2 threads. So there's a total of 14 threads that we need in this section, and have it nicely centered. Okay, same here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 wide, and we can just perfectly center it if we have letters that are about 7 X's high or wide. All right. And so all of these alphabets that you find on Pinterest, they are all about 7 stitches high and wide. Or I say about because some of them are 6 stitches and some of them are up to 9 stitches. They will still fit, but I think I have chosen the 7 stitch height and width because I think it just fits perfectly on our 4-inch pin looms. All right, so we already know a lot at this point. So 7 by 7 is a really good size for lettering and have it centered on our looms. And also we have learned that cross stitch is a little X, so it's 2 stitches that intersect with each other. And let me see if I can hold this up closely here so that you can see each of those little X's is 2 threads wide and 2 threads high. And also you see the little heart here on the side. What I want to show you is that like you can do with the back stitch, you can shrink the patterns or make it bigger by going over more threads. So the little heart that we see here is worked over just one thread wide and 1 thread up. Okay, so let's get started here. Let me clean up those alphabets. So last word on the alphabets, you find a whole bunch of alphabets on our Pinterest board. I do want to say some of them claim to be free, but I cannot guarantee that because things just change. Please respect copyright. If you find out that somebody claims the copyright or would like you to pay for the use of their work, I would like to encourage you to respect that. You can, of course, also make your own. All right, at this point, I would like to make a brief announcement because you see that the image has changed. We have a big thunderstorm going through right now, and we are running on battery power. But because of some other constraints, we will try to continue this recording to get it through. I probably will limit the instructions to and show them only on one loom. I'll show you the beginning for both looms because that's the only difference that we really have. So let's get started. Um, I will today show you the instructions on the Zoom loom, and you can see that it's already prepped. I have marked the proper beginning here, and I have the same done here on the turtle hexagon pin loom. And this is really the only difference. Once you have found the starting point, everything else will be the same. So let's take a look. On the turtle hexagon pin loom, you will start. Now let me show you first here. So here's our J, and this is what we will be working. And I am using the instructions from the National Needle Association for cross stitch. I think they had the best information. Let me just show you this. This is how to embroider, and this includes the cross stitch. It's from the National Needle Arts Association, and they have a brief but a very good description for cross stitch that made a lot of sense to me. So we're going to work the J, and what I want to show you is how we work horizontally and how we work vertically, and then how we work stitches that are a little bit out of sync. They are not really vertically or horizontally. And these are all the three different ways that we need to know for cross stitch. Okay, so our starting point will be right here, the bottom row, and we will work from the left to the right. And what you will see is that we will work like the one slants first, and then we work back, and then we'll think where we want to go from there. When you work cross stitch, there's really no one rule fits everything. Depending on the motif that you are working, you really have to look at the motif, and then figure out where you want to go next and how you want to work it. So if you follow today's instructions, you will learn everything that you need to know, but then if you work another letter or another picture, you will have to find your own rules. If you get stuck, contact me. I will help you to find your way around, particularly in the beginning with the first few projects, all right? So what we need to do is find this point here. And as we have seen before, we want to center our letter, and this means we have to find this point here. So the center is probably here and here, so right here, but we want to start with our embroidery here. So, and this point is the same as, let me show you first on the hexagon. On the hexagon, it's 8 from the left. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and you see the pin here, and it's 11 up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and that's where you see the pin here. And these instructions will be in the worksheet. So this is the point where you want to start with the J letter, okay? And today we will be using embroidery floss. You can see here on the example that the embroidery floss does, if you go over 2 threads, it does not completely fill in. You also see that if you go over 1 thread, it fills in better. I'm using embroidery floss for demonstration purposes. If you would like your lettering to fill in a little bit more than this and not show the X's as distinct as in this example, just use a little bit thicker yarn, okay? All right, I'm using the embroidery floss in dark blue because that sticks out nicely. and I'm using the floss. If you look at the embroidery floss, it has like multiple little strands here, a total of 6 to be precise. And for a lot of embroidery work, people split those little strands. For our work today, we'll keep them all together. We will not split them. All right? And for our letter, we will need a lot of thread. So we will measure 4 times the length of our ruler, or 48 inches. 1, 2, 3, 4. And that's where we snip it. All right. And we make a slip knot on one end. And it just needs to be long enough that we can weave it in later on. And then we find the other end. And put the needle on. Here we go. All right. And I will just show you on the hexagon where to start. On the hexagon, I want you to anchor the yarn right here at the bottom white nail, and then go to the back of the work. I don't think I need to explain this at this point. You know where it is. And then you come out right here where the 2 pins intersect. Remember, this is like 8 from the left and 11 up. All right? So this is where you come out, and this is where you start on the hexagon. See, let me wiggle here. The starting thread, this is where you will start. Okay? All right, since I will show, and this is the only difference from now on, just follow the instructions for the zoom loom and you will be fine. Okay, let me rescue this thread, make a new slip knot, and then we'll go to our zoom loom. Okay, all right. On the zoom loom, as you know, we have a few more threads in this direction and a few less in this direction. So for the zoom loom, so that we center the J, and this I will explain this, how to center a motif in the worksheet a little bit more. For now, to work the J, just follow me here. On the zoom loom, we count 8 threads up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. All right. And then we count 12 from the left. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Where these 2 pins intersect, that's where we want to get started. All right. So what we will do here is we put our slip knot near the bottom, over any pin at the bottom, near to that intersection. Okay, anywhere will do. And then we go to the back of the fabric. Here we go. And then we bring the needle up where those 2 pins intersect. See that? All right, so here we come up, bring up the thread. Ta-da, here we are. All right, and at this point we can take out the pins. Make sure that you keep them safe, that nobody gets hurt. All right, and here we are ready to go. All right, so now what? Okay, let's take a look. I made some cheat sheets. So this is what we want to work. The letter J. And I made some cards that show how we will work it. First, we will work here this row at the bottom. See that? Okay, so 4 stitches right here. And let's see how we work those. Let me see if I can put this here. And then here you have also this one as comparison. The way cross stitch is worked, it's pretty much 2 straight stitches that intersect, and we want to work over 2 threads. So what we will do is we work from the left to the right and make 4 stitches, count 2 to the right and 2 up to make a diagonal straight stitch. That's the very first action that we will do here. Okay? All right, you go out here. Here we go. All right? So, first straight stitch, and instead of finishing this as a cross stitch, since we want to have 4 cross stitches that all go in the same direction horizontally, we will take a shortcut. We will make 4 of those straight stitches first. So from where you went down, count 2 down to come up, and then make another diagonal stitch, which means 2 to the right and 2 up to go down. Okay, so now we have 2 straight stitches. We want to do 2 more. So we go 2 down to come up, make another diagonal, 2 to the right and 2 up. And if you are confused right now, just bear with me and just follow along or watch, and then you can later on rewind to see why I'm doing this. The aha effect will come. One more time, count 2 down to come up, and make 1 more diagonal stitch, 2 to the right and 2 up. Okay, here we go. So at this point we have a horizontal line of 4 straight stitches that all go in the diagonal. And what we now will do is we will stitch back with slanted straight stitches that slant into the other direction. Let me show you what I mean. Count 2 down to come up. 1, 2. And now you are working in the opposite. So you go 2 to the left and 2 up to go down. Maybe. Here we go. And look at that. Ta-da! Here's your first cross stitch. All right? So it's a slant in the other direction, but we're reusing all the holes. And that is one thing that's very important for cross stitch, that the crosses use straight sides and have the same length, at least for the regular cross stitches. There are variations to the cross stitch that play with that, but for now, to do plain cross stitch, we want to make sure that the sides are straight and the stitches have the same length. All right? So guess where we are going? Yes, we're counting 2 down to come up right here. And then we go 2 to the left and 2 up to make the next diagonal stitch, straight stitch in the other direction. We are reusing the holes, and here is our second cross stitch. And I think from here it's pretty easy to guess where we are going. Count 2 down to come up, and for the next cross stitch, from here we always go 2 down to come up, and then it's 2 to the left and 2 up to go down. It's really easy to find because we will reuse all the holes that have already been used before. One more time, 2 down to come up, and 2 to the left and 2 up to complete our first row. Here we go. This is our first row of cross stitches on our J. For comparison, you can see the bottom row of X's on the completed J and the first row of 4 X's here on our current work. You do see the difference in weave. So this is the 8th set and this is the 7th set. The Zoom Loom is a little bit tighter in weave, but the J's will be the same. All right, let's take a look at what we're going to work next. So this was our card number 1, and you will find copies of these cards in the worksheet. So we completed the first row working cross stitches horizontally. All right, let's take a look what we have next. And I'm not sure if you can see this. So here at the bottom we have shaded the stitches that we already have made. And this is what we want to do next. We want to work a few stitches vertically. All right, and let's take a look at how we do this. So this will be here on our J. This is here, this row of 3 cross stitches that goes all the way up to the left of the row that we just worked. All right, so how do we get there? From the stitch, and let me just wiggle this. So from this stitch here, all we need to do is count 2 to the left to come up. Okay, wiggle, wiggle. Oh yeah, here with the thread you can see it even better. Okay, so here we are. Go 2 to the left to come up. And now we want to work our way up. And remember, we work the first set of straight stitches first. And I'll show you how to get going on this. Count 2 to the right and 2 up to go down. And you will see in a second what we're doing. All right? So here is the first half of the first cross stitches that will go all the way up vertically. Now work 2 to the, count 2 to the left to come up. Count 2 to the right and 2 up to go down. This will make the second slanted stitch. Why is this so important, what we're doing here? Well, let's do the last one. So 2 to the left to come up. And we count 2 to the right and 2 up to make that diagonal stitch or a slanted straight stitch. Okay, so and this is all we want to do here. If you go back to our pattern here, we just want to do 3 cross stitches that go up. And why is it important that we are doing what we're doing here? In cross stitch, it's a good manner that the cross stitches all point into the same direction. Here at the bottom row, when we went horizontally, we had all the cross stitches slanted that way, and then when we came back we covered them slanted that way. Okay, so now we go vertically, but we want to keep that pattern. Okay, so the first slant goes up that way, and now we work our way down slanting that way. Okay, how do we do that? All right, from the current point where you are, count 2 to the left to come up, and now make the slant. Count 2 to the right and 2 down to go down. Okay, so here is, and it's a little bit hard to see because we can't zoom in enough, but when you follow working, now just take a look that the stitches that slant that way are underneath the stitches that slant that way. And we want to keep it that way for all stitches, no matter where we work, okay? So to continue, count 2 to the left to come up, and count 2 to the right and 2 down to make that next diagonal stitch to complete the second vertical cross stitch. This sounds, you know, there's a lot of talk about it, but it's really, once you get the hang of it, it's really much simpler than all the talk that I'm doing here. So count one more time, 2 to the left to come up, and then 2 to the right and 2 down to make that diagonal stitch. Ta-da! Take a look, all right? And if we compare that here, so what we have done here is we have done the bottom row, and that's the horizontal row, and we have done the 3 stitches here on the left side, okay? So what we want to work next is we want to work this second row, so we work again vertically, and then we make that little X that's a little bit lost over here and go down again. So in our charts this looks like this. We will work our way, so here, this is where we are right now. We will work our way up and then make this little dinky over there, and then we come back down, and there's more to learn. All right, this was another power outage, and we are picking up here by working the second vertical row with a little dinky to the right, and a lot of the things are already known to us. So one thing here is that's new is, I'll show it here on the top. This is where we went down with our last stitch, okay? Now the interesting part is that this should be where we come up for the next stitch. But of course, if we were to do that, we would undo the last stitch. So what are we going to do? No problem. Just work that slanted stitch backwards. Okay, how do we do that? So instead of coming up here, we count 2 to the right and 2 up to come up, like here. Can you see the needle? So we're pretty much, instead from going from the bottom up, we start at the top and go down. That's all there is to it. And that was one thing I wanted to show you here. If you have a situation where the hole is already taken, or if you were to come up in the same hole that you would go down, work a diagonal and work the next stitch in reverse. So now to make our slanted stitch, we count 2 to the left and 2 down, or any other counting way to go down to this, to where we were supposed to come up. You see that? And pretty much you don't see any difference. So whether you start here and go down, or whether you start here and go up, there's no difference. On the back side, you will see the difference. First of all, you see here when we work the diagonal how nicely they line up, and with our first vertical, how nicely those stitches line up. So it's a very pretty back of our work actually, which will work out nicely when you do cross stitch on an Afghan. If we have to use an emergency stitch like that, you will get a diagonal, but that still looks pretty decent, so I would not worry about that too much here. See that little diagonal? So don't worry about it. That still looks pretty good. So let's go back to our front and work the next stitch. So from now on, we can just work regular vertical stitches. So we count 2 up to come up here, all right, and 2 to the right and 2 up to go down. So you can either count as I just did, or you can just go by looking at the next stitch. So I just have to go over to come out here. You see this? So even without counting, once you have the first row established, it's really very easy. Okay, so and here are our first 3 stitches. Oh, we want one more. No, that's it. Okay, so we have our 3 stitches, so we're at the same height as the first vertical row that we worked, and now we want to work that little dinky. Now this is pretty much something in between, so we can pretend we work a horizontal line, and we do that right now. So count 2 down to come up right here, and then we work a slanted stitch, 2 over and 2 up to go down. Oh, there is a little knot. Let's take care of that first. Here we go. So untangle. So see that here? So here we have made our vertical line up, and now we work that little dinky over there. We start like a horizontal, but now we finish this one, so we go 2 down to come up, and then work the diagonal, 2 to the left and 2 up, to work that extra stitch that really doesn't have a row. See that one? And let me just see. The instructions guide from TNNA calls it scattered stitches. So this one is really not a scattered stitch, but we have to think about how we want to work that to get that in there, because it's not really a row by itself. And I'm using here just an inconvenient extension to the left or the right to get those extra stitches in, those scattered stitches. Okay. So from here we have actually to work the vertical line, we have 2 possibilities. We can either go to the left or we can go down. I choose to count 2 to the left to come up. And then we start working the slanted stitches to complete the cross stitches of that vertical row. So count 2 to the right and 2 down, and here we go. 2 to the left to come up, diagonal, 2 to the right and 2 down to go down. So you see already this goes really fast. And one more stitch to complete this row, 2 to the left, 2 to the right and 2 down to make that last slanted stitch. Here we go. Wow, we already have the hook complete for our J. Let's take a look. Here you can see the comparison, and I think you can see where we are. So including the little dinky to the left. And now we'll start to work on the right side of our J. Let's take a look at our next card that will show us what to work next. So here we go. You can probably, yeah, the lighting conditions are pretty bad because at this point we're working off battery. So here are the stitches that we have worked, and this is what we're going to work next. Yes, you see that, right? So this is another vertical row. We're going up, and now we're making a dinky to the left. Okay, before we made a dinky to the right, now we're making a dinky to the left. Let's take one more, take a look. We will make 6 stitches, so we start on top of the last stitch here, and then we have 6 stitches going up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. All right, so let's do this. All right, so we are right now here, and where do we have to go? Yeah, we have to start right here. Okay, and so what you do is you just go over, in this case, 4 threads to come up. Okay, you see this here? This is where the needle is, and I show you the back, what it looks like on the back, and that's okay. So we're spawning 2 stitches here to come up, and that's still okay. You know, if you spawn too much, it becomes questionable, and you probably need to sew in a little bit. But spawning over 2 stitches like we did here, absolutely no problem, and it still looks decent. Okay, let's go back to the top. And so now we can work our 6 stitches up. We count 2 up and 2 to the right to go down. All right, and you see we have the same slanted direction, and I'll make the next stitches a little bit faster. 2 to the left to come up, 2 up and to the right to go down. 2 to the left to come up, 2 up and to the right to go down. You know, at this point you probably already have got the hang of it and you don't need to count. So we're now making a lot of diagonal stitches. Do you remember the first lesson when we made our diagonal stitches in lesson 2, when we did the flag design, and where you really had to count and concentrate? And so we will benefit from that now, because cross stitch is pretty much everything is slanted, but now you already have a feeling for going diagonal over threads. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, one more. We go 2 to the left and up, 2 up and to the right. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That looks good. And we want to make that little dinky here to the left, right here. So we just pretend we're working a horizontal line to get that little dinky in, all right? Or that little extra stitch. So we go 2 to the left from here to come up, as if we were to make another stitch. But now we don't go up, but we go to the left. So we count 2 to the left and 2 down to make that slanted stitch to the left. Can you see it? All right. And now we work our way backwards. So we count 2 up to come up. And we start making the other slants, the second layer. 2 to the right, 2 down. Here we go. Go 2 up, 2 to the right and 2 down. Now we're changing slightly the direction. 2 to the left, 2 to the right and 2 down. Or you can count 2 down and 2 to the right. So doesn't matter, whatever works. Or you don't have to count at all, and you just poke into the next available hole that you need. All right, so this was 2 to the left, and we work the diagonal. 3 more stitches, and then that row is already done. And at this point I will not give the details. See if you can determine the details where you need to go, or just watch what I'm doing. All right, and whoever invented the pause button, thank you very much at this point. All right, here we go. Ta-da! All right, almost looks like a J already, doesn't it? Okay, if you compare that, it looks like there's only one more row missing. So we make one more vertical row and then one more dinky to the right, and that should be it. Okay, let's do it. We stay on the same level. So here's the first row. And we don't want to add to that. We want to start here in the second row. Again, the thread went down here, so we cannot come up here. Remember what we're going to do? We make the first stitch backwards. Okay, so we come up where we usually go down, which is right here. You can count 2 to the right and 2 up to come up. All right, so here we are, and then we work that first slanted stitch backwards. Now we go down into that same hole. Here we go. Okay, let's take a quick look at the back. That's where we are, and we just made that second slanted stitch right here. See that? All right, and it looks a little bit funky, but still relatively organized, and that's exactly what we want. All right, here we go. And now we will work, oh, I forgot to show you the little chart that we have here. So this is our next chart that we want to work. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 going up and 1 to the right. And then we work down here, and that will conclude our J. All right, let's do this. And this should go really quickly. We already have the first half cross stitch. And so we now go 2 to the left to come up. And we just work another 6 stitches to the top. And it will be the same height as the other row that we already worked, so this will go really quickly. Very little counting involved at this point. And whoops, just stitching. And here is number 4. 2 to the right and 2 up to go down. 2 to the left, 2 to the right and 2 up. And 1 more stitch. And then after this stitch, let me just finish this stitch here. There we go. We again pretend that we're going horizontally. So this is again where we combine vertical and horizontal directions. So we count 2 down to come up, 2 to the right and 2 to the top to go down. Count 2 down and come up. At this point we start finishing the cross stitches. So 2 to the left and 2 up to go down. Here we go. So that's our little one. And now we can go 2 to the left to come up, 2 to the right and 2 down to start working that downward row to complete the 6 cross stitches in that downward row. All right, here we go. And that's all there is to it. It goes really fast, and you will find some help for the other letters if you don't want to. Okay, let me say that. I would like you to work the J, because the J is the instructions that I give for the J teach you all the directions. You know, vertically with extension in both directions, horizontally. So there's a lot of stuff that you can learn making the J for July. And after that, if you want to tackle your initial or another letter, there will be some instructions in the worksheet on how to get started on that one. And I will provide some ideas for the alphabet that I'm using here, but you can pretty much choose, so little steps I will provide. So start with a J, and then you can start exploring your own of the same alphabet using the directions that are in the worksheet. And then you can, I suggest you can venture out into pretty much doing whatever you want to do. There's a lot of stuff to learn. You know, we have the slants all in the same direction, working so that it looks decent on the wrong side, um, working over 2 stitches to make sure that all the sides are the same length, and there's a little bit more coming up shortly. So give it some time to learn all the things about cross stitch. The good thing is that you can do it gradually. It's a lot of fun to work cross stitch in many different ways. Do it gradually. Don't try to jump ahead. You have probably seen those counted cross stitch. They almost look like paintings. There are like thousands of stitches in gazillion of colors. Of course, I'm exaggerating. To make pictures that almost look like paintings. So don't jump from the J to a painting, but do it gradually. And I would like to show you the next step here. Let me just, so pretty much let's go back here. So this is our J. Again, the J is worked the same way, and you can see this here when I hold them next to each other. The J is worked the same on the zoom loom and on the turtle hexagon pin loom. Just follow the instructions that I have given you, and you will be perfectly fine on either loom. Except for the beginning, so find the first stitch and then you are pretty much ready to row. So you can at this point release the thread, and if you want you can actually, let me do one thing here, because I want to show you one more thing that is critical for cross stitch, but for that I think we should get that thread out of the way. So what I want you to do was once we're done here, just bring that thread to the outside of the loom. All right, so just go here from the inside out, and that gets it out of the way. Because what I would like to do next is I want to work with you this little heart. And there are actually three things to learn about this little heart. Number one, we want to start using different colors, which require reading a chart. Number two, I want to reduce the stitch size. So instead of going over two threads in both directions, we will only go over one thread in both directions. Thirdly, when we work what you can see here in green, this is when we really will work scattered stitches, where we will work just one stitch at a time. All right, so three things to learn. Let's get started. Again, the instructions will be the same for the zoom loom and for the turtle loom. And I have a little chart here. I call it the little heart. Again, you will find this in the worksheet. And what we will learn here is reading charts. Okay, if you take a look at this, this is our legend. So there's the X. Everything that is an X means you have to work it in red. So if you see here's an X, and then above that are 3 X's, and above that there's an X here, and there's an X here. Those stitches will be worked in red. Okay? And then there are those little circles down here. If you see a little circle, that means please make a cross stitch in green. And you will see several circles here in the little chart, and all of these little circles will be green cross stitches. And that is an example for a chart. You may have more colors and a larger picture, but that's pretty much how it works. So if you have a chart, or if you do counted cross stitch, you count, okay, here's one I make in green. You count, here's green, red, green. Next row is green, red, 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 green. Next row is green, red, green, red, green. And so what we will do here, it really doesn't, you don't have to work them row by row, but that's how you read the chart, okay? And another thing that you can do, we will work the heart first, and then you can say, okay, to the left of the heart, I need to make this in green. Or to the bottom of the tip of the heart, I need to add 1 green stitch. Okay, so this is, we practice a little bit chart reading here. All right, let's get started. We will start with a little heart, and for that we will need any embroidery floss in red. I continue to work with the whole strand of red, so I'm not splitting it. It will be just fine. And since we just need a few stitches, 1 time the length of our ruler, or 12 inches, will be sufficient. Right, let's make a little slip knot here. And thread the needle on the other end. Okay. All right, and now I want you to take a look here at the one that's still on the loom. I have anchored it here on the hexagon loom on the top left black nail. Any nail in this area will be fine. And where we will start, do you see here this X? So this is like the row from the J. So the left side from the J, we just count up 1, 2, 3 threads, and that's where we want to get started. Okay? This is random. If you don't hit it exactly, you'll still be fine, but that way it fits nicely with the J, and it fits nicely onto the loom. That's why I picked it. So again, use the left side of your J to guide you, and then just count up 1, 2, 3 threads, and that's where you want to come out. Okay, let's take a look. Here on our zoom loom, we can just anchor it anywhere here in this area. Bring it to the other side. Okay, and then we do the same here. So here is the left side of our J, and we count up 1, 2, 3, and that's where we will come out. Okay, so that's another thing, that if you have a complex design, use what you already have stitched to guide you to find another a beginning or another part of the design. That's exactly what we're doing here. All right, so this is where we come out. Again, use the left side of your J and then count up 1, 2, 3. That's where you come out. All right, and remember that we will only work over 1 thread. So for our first red cross stitch, let me just put this up here like this. So if you look at the chart, we are working that X down here. So we start at the tip of the heart. So first order, we need to make 1 red cross stitch right where we are right now. So we go 1 over and 1 up to go down. Remember that we want to have the slants go this direction, from bottom left to top right. Okay, and then we count 1 down to come up, and we make the slant 1 to the left and 1 up to go down. Ta-da! And now I think this is just a really cute too, to just take a look at that. All of a sudden, those the cross stitches that go over 2 threads, they look huge compared to that tiny little thing. Why would you make the tiny little things? If you have a design that has more details, is one thing. Also, you can use those tiny X's if you have something that bigger that otherwise would not fit onto your pin loom. You can try to make them in little cross stitches like this, because you just fit more of them, right? Okay, so let's go back to our heart chart. So we have made the tip of the heart down here, and then we just work the next row of red X's. So we need to go 1 to the left and then make a horizontal row with 3 cross stitches. Does that make sense? Okay, so next row we go 1 to the left to come up, and then we work a horizontal row with 3 stitches. So 1 over, 1 up to go down, one down to come up, almost too tiny to see on the camera, 1 to the right and 1 up to go down. Whoops, I lost my thread. There we go. Here's our stitch number 2. 1 down to come up, 1 to the right and 1 up to go down. So here's our horizontal row with 3 stitches. We go now from the right to the left to make them into cross stitches. Go 1 down to come up, 1 to the left and 1 up to go down. Go 1 down to come up, 1 to the left and 1 up to go down. Go 1 down to come up, and 1 to the left and 1 up to go down. There you go. I'm holding this as close as possible to the camera so that you can see. Otherwise, use the pictures in the worksheet. So now there is a row with 3 cross stitches horizontally. Let's take another look at our chart. So there are 2 more stitches to make the heart in red. Okay, so we look up, there's one that's right over the first one, and then there's one that's right over the third one. Okay, so doesn't really matter how you work them, if you work them in rows or not. For my purposes, I will just work them. I work this one first and then go over and work the other one. I'll show you how I do that. But there's really nothing wrong with it. Okay, so we need to work the first stitch backwards. So count 1 over and 1 up to come up right here. Count 1 to the left and 1 down to go down. Count 1 up to come up. One to the left. Let me just 1 to 1 to the right and 1 down to complete that first part here of the heart. Can you see that? All right. So, and now we can just count 1 to the right to come up, and we will work the last red stitch here. Count 1 to the right and 1 up to go down. And here it really doesn't matter how you do the second part. I count 1 to the left to come up. You could also count 1 down to come up. And then I count 1 to the right and 1 down to go down. All right, so here's your little heart. Okay, and on the back it might look something like that. If it looks slightly different, that's okay too. I want you to bring that thread to the front of the loom at this point right here, so that it's out of the way when we work the last or the second color. Okay, let me show you. Oh, this actually looks already pretty cute too. So if you run out of steam, you could just leave it like this. Let me show you what we will do next. And so this is the last part of what I would like to show you today. We will make pretty much 1 row of green cross stitches around that little heart that we have. And we will use this 1 stitch. We will make 1 stitch at a time. Okay, so this is practicing the scattered cross stitches. All right, And you can vary this. You know, for example, you can work like the 3 ones here, like a vertical row. But just for practicing purposes, I will show you how to work each stitch individually. On our little chart, it looks like this. So these are all the circles that we're going to work. That pretty much doesn't matter where you start, since we work each stitch individually. We will just start somewhere. You will need 2 times the length of a ruler. So this is about 24 inches. And again, we'll make a slip knot. And thread the needle. Here we go. And on the hexagon loom, I just anchored it on the same pin that I used before, which is the top left black pin. If you want, you can anchor it on the same, on the zoom loom, you can anchor it on the same where you have the red, or just anywhere over. Okay, it landed on another one. That's perfectly fine. The real idea is that it's close to where you want to work your stitches. All right. So, and then bring it to the back of your work. Here we are, wiggle, wiggle. All right, oh, and I need to stay in the camera. So, and now we can pretty much start anywhere we want, okay? I choose the top row of the heart that we have right now, and I want to start working this green cross stitch right here. That's right next to it. That will make it easy to find. Okay, let's take a look. So here is our top row of the heart, and we just come out one to the left of that top. You see that here, wiggle wiggle? So that's where we come out. And that's the first cross stitch that we want to work. Again, for demonstration purposes, I will show you scattered stitches. So you make sure that the slant goes into the same direction. So you count 1 to the right and 1 up to go down. Okay, so here's your slant. But then you finish this stitch. So in this case, I count 1 to the left to come up, and 1 down and 1 to the right to go down. So, and yeah, all right. Sorry for the lighting conditions. But you can see now here that we have completed just one individual cross stitch to the left of our heart. Okay? So, and now we will work around the heart, and we can see here in the chart there is another green one on top of the one that we just worked. So we will work that next. From where we are, we count 1 to the left and 1 up to come up. And then we work the slant, 1 to the right and 1 up to go down. 1 down to come up. 1 to the left and 1 up to go down. Here we go. Another scattered stitch. Based on our chart, there is 1 to the right of that. And we could have, you know, probably if I would not demonstrate right now, I would have just made those 2 together. But since we want to practice scattered stitches, we make each stitch individually. So now we work a full cross stitch to the right of the one that we just worked. Okay? So we go 1 down and 1 to the right to come up. Or you might want to start thinking now, okay, I need to make another first slant, which starts at the bottom left and goes to the top right. And here we go. Okay? And I count 1 to the left and to come up, and I count 1 down and 1 to the right to go down. Here we go. All right, you see how we travel around that heart? So the next one will get a little bit tricky, and that's actually a good exercise because if you work with multiple colors, you will have those situations where you just have to make one stitch, but it's surrounded by other stitches. Okay, and it gets a little bit tricky, but just practice that you don't pierce the ones that are already in place. And let's do this right now. So we have to get between those 2 red stitches. From where you are right now, go 1 down to come up, and make sure that you don't pierce the red threads, and you count 1 to the right and 1 up to go down. All right, so take your time when you do this. Okay, it may be that, wow, this is really tricky, but this is really rather intense practicing, but I want to show you in one design a lot of things. Right, so we want to complete the stitch, go 1 to the right to come up, and 1 to the left and 1 up to go down. Here we go. See that little X in the green between the red? All right, here we go. The next stitch is right here, so we go up on top of the other red stitch to the right. Okay, so this would be right here, and now this is easy. We just go 1 over to come up, 1 to the right and 1 up to go down, and go 1 down to come up, 1 to the left and 1 up to go down. There we go. And you can now copy, just, since it's geometrical, you can just copy what you did on the left side. So we need 1 more on this side. Count 1 down and 1 to the right to come up, right at the tip of the red heart. Count 1 to the right and 1 up to go down. Count 1 to the left to come up, 1 to the right and 1 down to go down. So that completes the little X on the corner. Count 1 down and 1 to the left to come up. Make the slanted stitch to the top right. Go 1 to the left. And it really doesn't matter whether you go to the left or up to make that where you start the other slant, as long as you finish that cross stitch with the right layering. Okay, so let's take a look at our chart. So we have copied what we did here on the left side, on the right side, but we know there's more. Let's take a look at our chart. So here is 2 stitches, and we need 1 more stitch, and that is on that same row with the 3 red heart stitches. Okay, so let's work that one right now. We go 1 to the left and 1 down to come up. Make the slant from the bottom left to the top right. Go 1 down to come up, and 1 to the left and 1 up to go down. So pretty much just make a cross stitch. All right, here we go. Let's take a look at what we need to do next. Aha, there is 1 right here next to that 1 red stitch. Okay, so it's not necessarily connected to the other green stitches, but it is right next to the red stitch. So this is almost like map reading, where you know, which road do you take? Okay, you don't go down, but there's another landmark, which is the one red stitch from the tip of the heart, and we need to work a green stitch right next to that. Let's do that. Okay, so from where we are, count one down to come up, and then we make that slanted stitch right next to that one red stitch of the heart tip. Here we go. Can you see that? All right, and then we go one to the right to come up, one to the left, and one up to go down. Ta-da! Here we go. So landmark was the one red stitch from the tip of the heart, and we know that based on our little chart, we needed a green stitch right next to that, and that's what we did. Okay, so here's the tip. So we need one more green stitch under that particular red stitch. Okay, so that's the one that goes the farthest down. So from where we are, we go one down to come up, one to the left, and one down. Make that slanted stitch. Go one to the right to come up, one to the left, and one up to go down. Here we go. Ta-da! So, and this is our new tip from the heart. Okay, now we need to do what we did before, just copy what we did here, and you can see there are two more stitches missing. One green stitch to the left of the heart tip, and then another one to close the loop. Let's take a look at what it looks like on the chart. So this is here. We just made the tip of the heart. On the chart, that's this stitch. In reality, that's this stitch. The next one is here. So there's one green stitch on the other side of the tip of the heart. Okay, and then there's one more stitch that pretty much closes the loop. Let's do one stitch at a time. Let's do the cross stitch to the left of that heart tip first. So count one to the left from where you are, one up and one to the right to go down to make the first slanted stitch. Count one down to come up, one to the left, and one up to go down. Here we go. Let's clean up this. Here we go. Okay, so, and you can see it already here that there's really only one more stitch that's missing to make it look pretty, but I do want to show you where on the chart this is. So we have two stitches here on the side, on the left side, and there are three of those little circles or bubbles on the left side. So we need to make one last stitch right underneath those two stitches right here to complete the design. So let's do this. Go one to the left from where you are to come up. Work the slant, one up and one to the right to go down. One to the left to come up. And one down and to the right to go down. Congratulations. I hope you can see this now. You can release the needle at this point. All right, I hope you can see this now. Let me hold this up a little bit. So here's your J, worked over two threads, makes bigger X's. And then here's the little heart that we worked first, and it has a nice border around it, and the heart is worked in just over one thread, and you see that it's much more detailed, and also with the same yarn, of course, it closes in a little bit more. All right, so this is the J on the Zoom Loom, and here is the J on the hexagon turtle loom. All that is left to do at this point is slide it off, and slide it off carefully. You know, carefully particular with the make sure that the anchored embroidery floss comes off nicely, because you don't want to tug it. Let's do this here. There we go. And then all you need to do on the back, so you can see probably here a little bit how we benefited from anchoring it and leading it to the front of the loom, because it was out of the way. It could otherwise happen that it all gets scrambled up here, okay? And you don't want that. You don't want to clutter it up more than necessary. So to get those threads out of the way, it makes a lot of sense. So all you need to do now is just weave in the ends. You can do it any way you want. I will just show you one example. It's really very simple. You don't even have to secure it. You can just go through some of the loop, some of the back stitches that you have, or the stitches on the back, they are not back stitches. So something like that is perfectly acceptable, and then you just clip it off right here to make it look like that. All right, so this week you don't need to show your backs, but I want to encourage you to look at the backs. If it looks similar to something like that, it's perfectly fine. You know, if there are threads going all the way like this and this and this and this from your stitching, which means you have not really stayed close to the previous stitches, it will be a little bit too much. But anything like this, and you can see it even here with the tiny stitches, it looks pretty decent. There are a lot of stitches that go either that way or that way, and some that go diagonal, but it looks pretty decent. All right, so here's our J from let me just cut this off here a little bit. Here's our J from, oh, that actually looks pretty. Yes, I like it. From the Zoom Loom. And here is the J from our Turtle Loom. And that's pretty much everything for today. A very brief introduction to cross-stitching, but I think you should have enough information at this point to find your way around, to get started. Let's hide that so that it looks a little bit better. Here we go. So you have enough tools at this point to find your way around. Let's add the chart here. You know how to read charts at this point. For the little heart, you have learned to count. We worked in both directions, horizontally and vertically. Particularly on the heart, we did the scattered stitches. So you have a lot of tools, even if you have to practice a little bit more, but you have a lot of tools to get started with cross stitch at this point. Consult all the resources that I mentioned before. Again, I would like to remind you of Illumination. Tons of really good information fitted for our pin looms. And also, of course, Google it. Pinterest, if you look small cross stitch on Pinterest, it's overwhelming. So I would like you to get started. Work a J for July. After that, see if you want to work another letter. And this one, this is the alphabet that I used. You can see the J here, and that's the same J here. So these are 7 by 7, this alphabet here, and you can find that on Pinterest. Um, work your own initials, for example, all right? And then venture out, see if you find another alphabet that you like, or see if you find some other small motifs that you like. Which brings me to this week's challenge. You will find another mystery challenge, and I will post that on Thursday. You will find the information on our blog and in the worksheet. So practice until Thursday, practice your J's so that you are ready to do some mystery cross stitch on Thursday. All right, that's all there is to it for week 6. Thank you very much for listening and watching, and happy cross stitch embroidery. Auf Wiedersehen!